Shalom Aleichem. Mishnah Yomi continues, beginning Bezrat Hashem Sukkah. Sukkah is all about the Sukkah, the temporary dwelling that we use on the festival, the Chag Sukkot, and the other mitzvot of Sukkos. So Mishnah Aleph, Sukkah Shehi Gavoha Lamalam Esrim Amma Pesula. A Sukkah that is taller than 20 amot tall is puzzle. Now, the Rebbe says this is a pretty tall sukkah. It's about 33 feet. It's a pretty big sukkah. Rabbi Yehuda Machshir, Rabbi Yehuda says it is still kosher. Now, the Gemara explains the point of contention is a sukkah is called a diras arai, a temporary dwelling. We leave our house, we live in a temporary dwelling outside, and if you're building a sukkah 20 amot tall, you have to use fairly strong, robust materials, and that looks like a dirat keva, that looks like a permanent structure. So the sages say that's not a dirat arai anymore, it's not a temporary structure anymore, so you can't build such a tall sukkah. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, you can even build the sukkah like a permanent structure out of stronger materials. Now the Mishnah continues, She'ena gavoa asar tefachim, if it is not 10 tefachim tall, it's 10 hands breadths, that's pretty short, 36, 45 inches, give or take, depending on how you define your tefach. That's not going to be good. We're going to see she'ein lo shlosha defanot, if it doesn't have 3 walls, v'shechamata meruba b'tzilata, or the sun is greater than the shade, pesula. So all of these cases also, the sukkah is no good. Obviously, a sukkah that's very short, you can't accommodate people in there, even seated. Now, the 3 walls issue, the Bartanura gets into it, the Gemara gets into it. There are ways to have 2 walls plus a bissel. That's the technical term. A bissel is another board that's a tefach, but it's within 3 tefachim of another one of the walls. So we rely on lavud. Lavud, we've talked about in Shabbos and in Erevin. It's the idea that if something is pretty close, it's as if it's joined up and that space is filled in. So a 1 tefach board within 3 tefachim of another wall could become as if it's a valid 3rd wall. So really you need 2 sturdy walls and a bit of a wall and you'll be okay. There's discussion in the Mefarshim, in the post-game, and maybe you need a tzura to petach, also joining that little 1 tefach, little bissel of wall. Tzura to petach, we talked about in Erevin, it's like a door frame without a door. That might also be pretty good as a discussion. A lot of the picture books have examples of this. There's also a remez, Sukkah ends in a hey. And the letter hey, if you look at it, it's 2 strong walls, and then a little bit of a yud, floating there, like a little bit of a 1 tefach, like walala, little mini wall. So the hey is a remez to the 3-walled sukkah. Now the 3rd qualification here, if there's too much sunlight, then it's not a sukkah. It's not, sukkah literally is, schach is lashon of covering. It's not covering and protecting from the sun. Now the Mishnah goes on, Sukkah Yeshana, an old Sukkah, Beit Shammai Poslin. Beit Shammai says an old one's not good, Beit Hillel Machshein. Beit Hillel says you can use it for the mitzvah. Ve'ezlahi Sukkah Yeshana, what is an old Sukkah? Kol she'asah kodem l'chag shloshim yom, one that was made 30 days before Sukkos. Aval, but imasol l'shem chag, if he made the Sukkah in advance, but he made it for the purpose of doing the mitzvah of sitting in the Sukkah, afilu meitchilat hashana kashera. Even if he made his sukkah for next year, right at the beginning of the year, meaning a year before Sukkot. So he made his new sukkah the day after Sukkot of last year. Kishera. So that would be kosher because this item, this dwelling, this booth was made for the purpose of the mitzvah. Great. On to Mishnah Bet. Ose sukkato tachat ilan. Somebody constructs their sukkah underneath a tree. Kilo sabato chabayit. It's as if he's made a sukkah inside the house, and that's not valid at all. So there's a good business in trimming trees and clearing out trees right before Sukkot. Good thing to do. Sukkah al gabei sukkah. What about you built a sukkah on top of another sukkah? Ha'elyona kashera tachtona pesula. The elyon, the upper floor, that's a kosher sukkah. Use it for the mitzvah, but the underneath is not valid for sukkah. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, but Rabbi Yehuda says imein diorin belyona. If you can't really live in the top one, hatachtona kashera, then the bottom one is good, meaning the floor of the upper level, well, that's the schach of the lower level. And if that's very flimsy and you can't support weight on it, then the upper one is really not a dwelling. You can't really use it as a sukkah. You can't bring your table in there and your food and your soup and your bread and have a suda there. So it's really not a dwelling. And you've basically, the bottom sukkah is the only one that's kosher, and it's basically a sukkah that has 2 layers of schach. Shabbat shalom and yashar koach.